You are live, guys.
Okay, we've just gone live. Okay, good evening and welcome to the ATM panel discussion. This is the first discussion of its kind in the African Transformation Movement, and the intention really of this discussion is to ensure that the leadership is in touch with the local communities, is in touch with the people they lead. They get an opportunity to have a dialogue around issues. Particularly for this discussion, we are going to be looking at unemployment. We all know that the unemployment rate has risen and it's at alarming levels. And today, in the ATM panel discussion, we're going to be looking at unemployment, but we are not just only going to be analyzing the status quo. We are also going to be looking at unemployment in a different way, by way of saying, what can we do as young people to take action and to begin to own up the situation and hopefully change it. Particularly, we hope that at the end of this discussion, we'll be able to find word-based solutions, because we know we are approaching the 2021 local government election, where we will be electing our leaders, our ward candidates. We want to have solutions that we can offer to them, coming from the discussions that we're going to have from the people that we lead. Also, we want to look at calling young people to action, because we know that young people are the ones that are affected the most, at least based on numbers, on statistics, by the plight of unemployment. To say, let's look at forming cooperatives. And we have here with us today Abaz Bendlela, people who have walked the road, who have started their own businesses, to share with us their own experiences, and hopefully through their own experiences they can motivate other young people to do likewise. We're also going to be looking at the relationship between youth and business, if you like, hoping to derive some youthful and business-oriented manifesto points for the African Transformation Movement as we build up to the local government elections. We're also, indeed, as expected, going to be actually looking at how unemployment affects or influences different facets of our social life. Today, I have a panel that is going to be engaging in a discussion, and in that discussion, my panel is going to be each looking at various topics that we have listed. I'm not going to give away everything now, but as we proceed, I will give you a much detailed information about that. But we are going to have the president of the African Transformation Movement unpacking the problem statement, and then we're going to be looking at the policy alignment of the ATM to youth issues. We're also going to be looking at the effect of unemployment on social issues. We're going to be looking at unemployment and gender-based violence. But of course, like I said, we're going to ask Abaz Bendlela to share their experience about their entrepreneurial journeys, and hopefully through that we can be able to build on or be encouraged or motivated to do likewise. We'll have one of our ward councillor candidates, kind of chanting the discussion on ward-based solutions. We also have experts from business sector to also relate to us how business fora can, play their own part in alleviating unemployment. Then the president of the African Transformation Movement will once again give us the closing remarks. So without any delays, I would like to hand over to the president of the African Transformation Movement, President Vuyo Zungula, the Honorable President Vuyo Zungula, over to you. Mr. President, the floor is yours. Uyayibona ke ingxaki la nto yokuqala ngomuntu omkhulu because andinokwazi umciba naxa ngaba engasafumaneki. Mr. President, the floor is yours. I think we lost him. He did mention that he was struggling with the network because he's busy campaigning somewhere. But I think that okay, I think he's back on. Mr. President. Yes, now the mic is functional, but it's still muted, Mr. President.
Evening. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clearly, Mr. President.
I'll try to be very brief because I might have network issues where I am. As a country, particularly young people, who are sitting on a time bomb as we have such high levels of youth unemployment. On the expanded definition of youth unemployment, we are sitting at 74.7% of young people. We have more than 800,000 young people who are neither in education and training, they are not working, they are not in the institutions of higher learning. In other words, they are in the lost generation. Therefore, we have a big problem as we have more than 10 million people unemployed in our country. And out of those 10 million people unemployed, more than 55% do not have matric. That means those are people who are not skilled, who could not be able to get any form of education. You have more than 35% have matric and less than 10% have a form of qualification or the other. Therefore, the problem that we're sitting with currently, it is a problem whereby we will not be able to deal with the issues that are affecting particularly young people if we do not come up with practical solutions. So that is, in a nutshell, the crux of the problem that requires practical solutions, not something that we could expect solutions for 10 years, 20 years from now, but something that we could get solutions for the next day. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the ticking time bomb is for everyone. When the bomb actually ignites, it's not only going to be killing or destroying those who caused it. It's going to be killing everyone. So I think that should be the impetus for us to put our own shoulders on the wheel. Thank you, Mr. President, for that message, reminding us actually that the expanded definition is just a way of masking a very horrible reality, because that definition does not consider other people who have struggled for longer and who have actually given up on looking for work. And so we must always be cognizant of that when we are being displayed with those statistics, that the actual reality is actually much worse. Now we are going to have U7 Mani, as well as U7 Mwabe, who expressed some delays, telling us about how the African transformation movement in its policy framework is aligned to the challenges that are faced by young people. I would like that discussion to be a bit broad, because I know that the African transformation movement is aligned. For example, I know I had the ATM Youth League making proposals about slashing the retirement age. And I'm reminded when the president is talking about practical and almost immediate solution, not long-term, but rather short to medium-term solutions to this, to coerce those long-term ones. And so I know, but for somebody who does not know about the African transformation movement, who does not know how the ATM prioritizes young people, despite that our president is the only youth president, which I think speaks volumes, and all youth of the Republic of South Africa should actually be proud of that. Somebody might not know that. How do you bring everything that is policy in ATM and show us that it aligns to the challenges of young people? If you are ready, I would like to hand over to you, 7mm.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Firstly, program director and organizers, I just want to know this invitation. I saw it on Facebook and everywhere. And the next thing I see here, there's about 11 of us. Where is the rest? These young people that we must speak to here, where are these young people? I see a handful here. So before we even proceed, let's just start there before. Otherwise, it means this is a boardroom discussion. Where are the masses? 7Cat, I can see you there. Where and next thing is empty. What is the situation? Can I just first get a sense of don't they have data? Maybe that's a problem. Maybe the young people don't have data, and then we set up a platform that requires tons and tons of data. What exactly is the problem? Comrade 7, where are the other young people? See 11 up, and not all of us are youth in this level. Like me, I'm not youth now by any stretch of imagination. So there's actually, I don't know, 7 Kusenu Ngena Wepi category, but again,
let me just bring context. Let me just bring context very quickly. We are live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. The platform that we've set up is only for panelists so that there are no disturbances. So everyone else is joining in via Facebook. And before we even go any further, we are trying to launch the spaces on Twitter as well, so that we can be able to be live there as well. So please just bear with us. We're getting a bit of technical issues, but we should be up and running in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I'm not I think for the benefit of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just in terms of responding to the question, also, just like the President, as you would know today, some of us that have got a double heading. My other head is really off the handle. It's a big day for the other head today. So I'm handling a lot of interviews. I've got others scheduled. So I'm going to make my input, but I must apologize beforehand. I won't be able to stay for the duration. But in terms of how is ATM aligned to youth issues and what have you, I think the very first demonstration in terms of responding to that answer is the age of our president. Our president is very young. In fact, he's the youngest political leader in all these political parties. arguably the youngest MP as well. If that is not enough to show the seriousness, right? And by the way, it's not because there was a shortage of matured people that could have picked up this role. No, there was no shortage, but President was put there because of confidence in him. But at the same time, it's a symbolic thing to show that ATM is about renewal. The ATM is an organization. This is about making sure that the youth take their rightful positions. So we're not going to be preaching about that and not practicing it. So we are putting a skin in the game. We've got the youngest president. So the youth can't really complain within ATM. Now, if you look at the 10 anchors of the ATM, you will see that apart from the one that deals specifically with youth issues, even the other of the anchors are actually biased towards the youth. When we talk about a decolonized economy, that decolonized economy is an economy that has to be driven by young people, is an economy that has got to be localized, is an economy that's not going to be hinging and depending on all kinds of legacies that the youth of today have got no connection to. So when we say decolonized economy, that on its own is a statement that shows that we want things that are informed and originating from South Africa, as opposed to be appendages of some imperialist things from out there. When we talk about the issue of sustainable human settlement and basic services, so that's the one. Education and skills development. Who would we want to educate and skill? This is one of the other anchors. The only people that require education and skilling, and it's important to understand the difference between being educated and being skilled. So young people, some of them are educated but are not skilled. So ATM has been very clear that the two must go together. You must educate and you must skill. And all of that is again one of the pillars that are focused towards young people. In ATM, we don't talk about just jobs, we talk about livelihoods. And in that livelihood, embedded in there are both job creators and job seekers. So we take the view in ATM that young people of today need to be groomed, not just to be job seekers, but to be entrepreneurial. And by the way, already the youth of today is already entrepreneurial. So by ATM taking a posture of livelihoods and therefore integrating the element of entrepreneurship is a recognition that we've got the youth in our midst, as it were. So those few anchors really are biased towards the young people. When we talk about gender-based violence, when we talk about even gender-based violence, we want to make sure that our young people don't get themselves into abusive relationships, because they are the ones that usually get into these abusive relationships more than others, as it were. So, I mean, if you look at all the young people that get killed and all of that, you can see that in all this, there's a word that I can't even say properly, misogyny or something. The people in the receiving end of this are largely young women. So by ATM being focused on gender-based violence and all of that, and wanting strict and harsh penalties for people that are abusing women, is because we're serious about young people. So I really sit here and can't be pontificating a lot about this thing. I'm just simply saying, yes, you've asked a question, but I think there's ample evidence in the ATM that the issue of youth is at the heart of the ATM. The actual anchor that deals with the youth in ATM actually starts with young people at young ages, at early childhood development, because in ATM, we understand and accept and appreciate the fact that so we start our relationship with young people at quite a tender age, as it were. So I think, to cut the long story short, the ATM has got, as I say, it's not just talk. We've got policy positions, we've got anchors that are biased towards youth, we've got a specific anchor that deals with youth. You can also look at our councillors that have been put out there. There's no shortage of young people on those poster boards, as it were. So indeed, I think this has been one of the easiest questions to answer in terms of ATM and its alignment to youth. And the answer is the evidence is out there that ATM is very serious about young people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, 7th MM, for those words. You know, in 2016, thereabout, the fees must fall, or the fallists rather, you know, had a decolonization of education among the list of things that they wanted change. So I'm sure many of them, when you spoke about decolonization, clapped hands to show that you are really speaking to them. I think also you mentioned a number of things that were quite clear, you know, starting from the president's age to the fact that, you know, skilling and education is in the space of young people, gender-based violence included, and mentioning that, you know, the councillor candidates that we have in our list, I think I can safely say that I've seen some of them. I haven't seen more than a handful of old people there. So I think that is really meaningful. You know, it's one thing to say people are facing unemployment, or these are the things that political parties are doing. But within the household, in our social spaces, we feel unemployment in different ways. For example, you might say that I'm unemployed, but when a man is unemployed, because of the society that we live in, a man who's unemployed tends to lose dignity, although that is a wrong stigma, but the truth is that it exists. And from there, those men may fall into drug abuse. They may fall into, you know, abusing their women because they now lack confidence and feel like they are being challenged by their women on different fronts. So unemployment goes just beyond the paycheck. It goes into our homes and it disrupts the lives of children who see the mother and father fight every day because of issues that emanate from unemployment. And so that is why we've asked Babu Gentile to speak to us about the influence or the effect of unemployment on social issues. At this point, I would like to hand over to you, Babu Gentile.
Thank you so much, Servant. Yeah, no, my camera is on now. You can see me. We're not talking to a robot. Thank you so much, comrades. I thank you, Servant Mani, for those words, and I really wish to perhaps take this few seconds to congratulate and just send out a word of gratitude to Honorable President Zongula for this platform and the entire ATM team. And so I think this is very important, especially around this time. It's always important to engage the electorate. And by electorate, I mean people like us, people in the civil society sector. And also just to thank you for the continued support in the work that we do on the ground as an organization, not in my name. But mine will be very short. First, we need to agree that when we say an issue is considered social, it means that it exists within a context of community, or it's a situation that is communal. So one way or the other, we are all affected by unemployment. And I always say that unemployment, like GBV, it's also a pandemic in this country, the social pandemic, one which is the main cause, in fact, of many other social ills in our country. Almost everything else that we we see happening today in South Africa is a direct result of the unemployment. You talk about juvenile delinquency, you talk about drug and alcohol abuse that you just mentioned, Seven Program Director. Mental health challenges, you talk about violence, whether it's against, it's perpetuated by men against women, women against men, or men against men. Physical health, and even a crime. So all those things are direct result of unemployment. And I do believe that we need to counter this effect of unemployment on social issues. We need to have some sort of a entrepreneurship. In addition to the business entrepreneurship that we have, we need social entrepreneurship, to be specific. And besides running the Not in My Name movement, which is a social justice movement responsible for the hashtag Not in My Name, I also run a social enterprise which focuses on designing corporate social investment strategies for medium to large corporations. So I believe in social entrepreneurship as one of the responses to youth unemployment, or just unemployment in general. This is because I've long held the view that, and I don't want to, program director, waste time on pointing unemployment causes this and that. Those are obvious. Unemployment effects are all around us. We all know, as I mentioned, there's crime, there's violence, there's ill health, there's abuse. So we know those things, and I don't want to spend time articulating something that is already known, but rather I wanted to take this opportunity to say that as part of the interventions, we need to encourage social entrepreneurship amongst young people. And I do believe and hope and have trust Bana ATM, it's one of the very good vehicles to drive this message. So social entrepreneurship, in my opinion, can counter unemployment because it has dire effects on the social setting of our country. So it can influence, it can fuel economic growth and increase job creation through business influence by bringing up the best access routes to new profit generation. So what I love also about social entrepreneurship is that your focus is not only on profit generation, which will uplift or change your livelihoods, but it also solves some of the social some of the social issues that you have. So you've got impact at the same time, you're also making your profit. So social entrepreneurs are changing the nature of corporate social responsibility, which is what I'm doing mainly with my company. So what we are doing, we're moving away from the give a man a fish mentality, and this happens a lot in the non-profit sector. You've got a lot of organizations depending on donations, and I know as well with political parties. So social entrepreneurs are breaking that and rebuilding the lifeless handout system, replacing it with empowerment-based and fully fledged body of social innovation. So social entrepreneurship is better positioned to advance also in social justice. It has a crucial role to play in creation and retention of jobs through strengthening the competencies so as to promote sustainable careers and employee mobility whenever possible within the social economy, and to encourage their transition into the mainstream economic that focuses mostly on profit generation. So social entrepreneurship can enhance social integration by entering into progressive dialogue with local communities, something like what we are doing now, non-governmental organizations such as the Not in My Name and others, and the private and state-owned enterprises to actively network and collaborate. So through these collaborations, especially with the non-governmental sector, a strong voice that calls for accountability can be birthed to encourage and ensure transparency in the private and government sector. So we do have non-governmental organizations who are holding some of our politicians accountable, but in Yaniso Masite 27, these organizations, because they are fully funded by another group of people, they advance a certain agenda. And then the people of South Africa, even though they may be quiet, we are all aware we know when there's a particular issue happening in the country, there's that one or two NGOs that are going to stand up and rush to court because they've got the resources. So it almost interferes with the democracy as we know it. So as I'm about to close, social entrepreneurs also, in my view, so through these collaborations, as well as my train of thought there, social entrepreneurs can also begin and champion a discourse on career progression and gender equality in the workplace. This will encourage more young girls and women and members of the LGBTIQ plus community to take on careers which were traditionally reserved for heterosexual men. And lastly, these networks and collaborations can also be platforms for provision of access to finance and support for startup organizations to enhance effectiveness of their services. And we need those platforms for the provision of access to finance to start businesses, social enterprises. So social entrepreneurs are, in my opinion, system changers, and as such, they've got a social responsibility to overcome the apathy, incomprehension, habit, and disbelief while facing a heated resistance from those with vested interests. And we know who are those with vested interests. So social entrepreneurs have to figure out how to make it happen. And in conclusion, unlike the government, social entrepreneurship efforts flow from the bottom up, typically from one person's inability to endure social injustices. And the unemployment, together with its firstborn poverty, are social injustices. So social entrepreneurs need then to come out and identify a problem and ask, what can I do, as opposed to what can be done without being actively involved. And that is a very valuable attitude that we need in these volatile economic times. Thomas Friedman says, as I close, one of the newest figures to emerge in the world stage in recent years is a social entrepreneur. This is usually someone who burns with the desire to make a positive impact in the world, but believes that the best way of doing it, as the saying goes, not by giving a man a fish and feeding him for a day, by teaching him to fish, thereby in the hope of feeding them for the entire lifetime. And I have come to know social entrepreneurs on recent years, and most combine a business school brain with a social worker's heart. The triple convergence and the flattening of the world have been a godsend for them. Those who get it and adapting to it have begun launching some very innovative projects. So we need young people who will start innovating innovating projects that will assist us in curbing unemployment in South Africa. I wish to stop the program director. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Siyabulela Jendile, the president of the Not In My Name South Africa. In the cooperative movement, we have several cooperative principles, and the social and solidarity economy at large, including cooperatives, hinges on the human aspect of business. The human aspect of business is bigger than the bottom line. This is the fundamental difference of a social entrepreneur. And the reason why I agree with you when you say the African Transformation Movement is the best vehicle for us to achieve broad social entrepreneurship is because, like the 7 cooperative principles, the African Transformation Movement also has its own values of the African Transformation Movement. And I think when I look at the 7 cooperative principles, which include voluntary, open member control, democratic control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training and information, cooperation among cooperatives, concern for the community, I find that I see strong similarities. So I agree with you. And I think that, you mentioned a good point when you say this tendency of feeding people social grant, giving a man a fish rather than teaching a man how to fish is a fundamental challenge. And that social entrepreneurship is a different way of doing business that concerns itself with the human being. And I think that as a way forward to say, let's also make ours a social entrepreneurship journey. Now, I would like us to take that discussion on social entrepreneurship, and because the people who practice social entrepreneurship, like in a cooperative, is normal human beings, like in a political movement, and they have problems at home. Some have lost jobs, but at the same time, backwards together, whether within their cooperative or within their political party, which is why it is important for us to create spaces where we can speak about issues like gender-based violence and link them to unemployment, where we might be forming social entrepreneurship partnerships to target unemployment, but we come with issues like gender-based violence in those spaces. Do we still feel the stigma? Do we still feel ashamed that in the workplace we can open up about the challenges that we feel at home, or the two should be separate because it's unprofessional, which brings a problem in terms of attacking or attending to gender-based violence. We have Seventh Cat Moji, the Madam Chair, the chair of the ATM Youth League, to speak to us about gender-based violence and unemployment. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good evening to everyone. First of all, we have taken that a very serious issue of gender-based violence, which one of the panelists have already mentioned that it's a pandemic on its own. And we have seen that it has its own triggers. Unemployment has got its own triggers on GBV. I mean, you have a situation where a lot of young women, as it was said earlier by UMM, that half of the time it's women that become victims. To say that they have some sort of dependence, and that's why they tolerate and they feel that they cannot run away from the situation that they're currently living under, because the government has failed 27 years later to create opportunities for young people, particularly the young women. So people end up having to endure and tolerate that kind of violence, that they experience, because there hasn't been an economic emancipation for women. Women and young people are not participating in the economic space, and therefore it becomes okay. So many cases go unreported because, this woman feels like, but this man is providing for me and I'm doing it for the kids, because it's better than being out there on the streets. We've also seen in the education and the higher education space where young women resort to prostitution because of issues of NSFAS. Now, this is where you're saying that, in an event where a person is unable to be dependent economically and financially, they end up having to withstand and endure these kind of violent crimes that take place. And they also put their life, the children's life at risk. Half of the time you see even other family members are affected by this matter. Just yesterday we received bad news that a young woman who's also a 19-year-old was stabbed by some neighbor, a next door neighbor, who is a drug abuser. Now this guy, you could almost say that had it not been an issue of he is not employed and he's taking drugs and all of that, wouldn't have targeted this young girl who is pursuing their education, trying to be something that is going to be a contributor in the society. Now you have a situation where unemployment has triggered so many social ills. We find ourselves having to tolerate, so many things in the society because people are unemployed, and we do not want to seem as if we are perpetrator-centric, but we are victim-centric, to say that, the government failing to put measures, and harsher sentences against perpetrators. This means that young women will forever be vulnerable, and as well as children, to these kind of crimes. So unemployment is just letting people become more victims. It's just letting people get away with murder, with crime, with so many things. I mean, it's not every day that, you know, a woman or a victim of a GBV is a victim because of their partner. But half of the time, you find out that this person is either, you know, it was a boss at work, or it was just the person that was robbing them, and then they decide to rape and murder them. So I'm just saying that, you know, GBV has got one of the triggers, which is unemployment. If we had too many people who are independent, we wouldn't be sitting in this situation where young women feel that they have to depend on men. So it goes back to what you were saying, Program Director. People have not been taught how to catch fish, but they have depended on this thing of getting a fish from the master. So they have to stay in those abusive relationships because they are afraid to go out there and stand on their own, because we do not have that mindset. We do not have, you know, that mentality that, you know, as we are studying so that we can be knowledgeable, not for us to be job seekers. We can be able to be entrepreneurs. We can be able to be job creators, but the government has not given the young people that kind of opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank you for being so conservative, because the next segment belongs to Mko, not to me. So you made me look good to Mko. And I think you know, you touch on very good points that I think, you know, for the African transformation movement, we can sit comfortably and say we are attending to gender-based violence. The return of the capital justice-based capital punishment is addressing exactly that. And I think when it comes to the issue of dependency, it becomes clear that, you know, when you look at the suicide rate of men and how it's skyrocketing, that you can't exclude unemployment from that. And that same challenge of unemployment affects also women on the flip side, because they are unemployed, they have to depend on men. They tend to have to tolerate, or at least they think they have to tolerate all that is gender-based violence from men. And I think when it comes to victims, we see some of the points that you mentioned about the ATM being victim-centric. And I think that becomes very important when you talk about gender-based violence, because some victims experience it, you know, more than once, and so things like rape more than once. And so you can imagine what the kind of support that these victims would need. So in 70, I hope you are ready, because the next segment is yours. I am to hand over to you. 70. Okay. I think with what we have covered so far, you know, the points tie on together very well between the social entrepreneurship and the attending to the dependency of the victims on their offenders. You know, because with social entrepreneurship, then women can begin to do something. I know of a story of women who were unemployed, living in some location. When their husband are at work during the day, they would come together and knit things and do all kind of handcrafting that they would then sell to make an income. But I also like what the president of Not In My Name South Africa mentioned, which is you know, what most NGOs or some of the NGOs do. We find that they support their funders. And I think that is why it is important to always remember that the African Transformation Movement is a self-funding party. And because of that, it guarantees the autonomy of the organization. And I think unlike those NGOs that feel compelled to support their funders, you know, the African Transformation Movement in that sense remains loyal to the people instead. 70 I think I've done my job for the day, and I want to thank all the participants thus far. And over to you, 70.
Thank you so much, Seven Basanda, but I'd like you to stay on because it seems as though I've got connectivity issues. I don't know if I'm audible.
Clearly, Seven. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's quite interesting that most of the speakers that talked here today are actually highlighting the issues that are surrounding youth unemployment. And if we actually drill down to the statistics of matters, we see that in the first quarter, in fact, in the last quarter of 2021, youth unemployment was sitting at 32.6%. And if you look at the actual nitty-gritty of things, in the age category 15 to 34 years of age, youth unemployment is sitting at 46.3%. Now, this actually means that about 1 in every 2 young people in South Africa are sitting without a job. And the one question that I've gotten, which is quite interesting, is why would we classify youth unemployment starting from the age 15? And one thing that I said as a rebuttal or a response was that if we look at the current status quo in South Africa, it does not allow us to actually say that the best person to start a job is at this specific age, because we've got child-headed homes, many of them in South Africa. And if you actually look at the pandemic that actually swept the country, many children were actually left without parents. And that meant then some of them had to drop out of school and actually start jobs or start trading or start businesses, whatever the case is. And there is active need for support, because you find that in some of the homes or the households, for instance, in South Africa, there is no support, or the elderly people or the old people or the elders are not able to generate an income that can be best sustainable for all of the children that are within the household. So that prompts in Babana, Makubu, for instance, must leave school and actually start go working or finding a business. Now, that is why the African Transformation Movement, one of the best stance that we've ever had, and one of the stances that we actually advocate for, is the ring fencing of the microeconomy, so that we can be able to allow young people to trade. Now, this the next segment that we're actually going to enter into will be drilling down into, the specifics, where we actually get to see real life examples of people trading in the microeconomy. The microeconomy, or the inner city economy, just kancane, or just to highlight it, is where you've got your salons, you've got your cabs, you've got all of these businesses that are operating in the micro space, that are actually able to come up with income that can best sustain the household or the family throughout the month. And as South Africans, we used to actually have such setups where we used to have ispaza shops, utatus banban, wine is scooter, delivering certain things when they needed to go to, when for instance elderly people need medication. This man would have a scooter and actually deliver such things for the elderly people. That is what we mean by the microeconomy. And I'd like to actually stand here and say that the African Transformation Movement does not believe that the youth of South Africa is lazy. We are the people that actually wake up in the morning and actually do something. We take action on a daily basis, trying to find ways for us to be able to be sustainable. Now, when we enter into this segment, I just want to appeal Bilibana. She's an entrepreneur and she owns My Food Crush. She's also on Instagram, myfoodcrush_SA. You can go and check her content there, but I want her to share her story so that we can be able to know exactly what in cases where we are facing adversity, what do we do? What example do we follow as the youth of 2021, following in the footsteps of the youth of 1976, obviously? Apiwa, could you please take the stage? Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Seven Mkolisi, for the opportunity and for that introduction. I hope that ndiyavakala enough. I'm sure that is a yes. Hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, please. Yes, please go ahead.
Apologies. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Apiwe Bilibana, and I'm I'm one of the youngsters that were actually, that found herself unemployed, you know. But what I would like to say first and foremost is that if you are not taught how to catch fish, teach yourself how to catch fish. I like it when Useven says, in the Yokubana, as the youth of South Africa, we are not lazy at all. We are not lazy. Yes, we may be demotivated. We may be struggling there and there. But if we get an opportunity to do something and make ends meet, we do that aggressively. All right. So mine is to share a bit of my a bit on my journey and my experience as an unemployed youth, and how I got to basically get started with My Food Crush, which was also not easy. It was so challenging. As we all know, 2020 came and it hit us all very hard and loud. I was in the hotel industry, so I've always been in the hospitality industry. And as much as other industries have been hit or affected by the pandemic, one of our industry, which is hospitality industry, is one of the industries that was hardly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic and all of that. So we found ourselves being stuck at home on lockdown. We don't know what we're going to do, no salaries. I was laid off in March 2020 with no backup plan, no salary, no retrenchment package, because you find a lot of young people that are at home, they do get those retrenchment packages. Some will get, some probably did get like your 2 months salaries, 4 months salaries. And then after that, the employer would be like, you know what, see yourself. I was unfortunately not that fortunate because 17th of March, you received a letter, end of March, you get that salary, and that was it. So I basically had to leave on EUIF, which was also not much because it was literally not even half of what I made on monthly basis. So I told myself that, you know what, I don't have a plan. I don't know what I'm going to do, but the one thing I know for sure is that I am not going to sit and die in poverty. I am not going to allow myself to be where I am and frustrated. And I started tapping into my creative mindset. I've always been this person who's always wanting to go out there and get things done, starting businesses. I remember my first business was in 2016, actually in 2017, which was an events company. It didn't do well, but when this opportunity came, I was like, you know what? I've always had it in me. So let me just think, what is it that I can do every day that is going to generate me money? All I needed was 100 rands a day, because obviously it's better than not getting a salary, than not getting anything at all. So I remember I saw a picture on Instagram, a picture of like a plate of food, actually, a plate of food. And I was like, you know what? I'm passionate in the kitchen. I love cooking. And I'm clued up. I know what happens in the hospitality industry. I know how to do the costing and all of that. If this that I have, I can do it for somebody else's company, it means I can do it for myself as well. Okay. So my role in the hotel industry was to sell hotels. So it's like, okay, fine, you know how to do this, you know the background. Let me take a plate of food and see what I can make out of it. That's basically how I got started. I remember I had a bag of tripe, a frigini, a bag yolusu, which really cost me about 165 rands. I bought that for myself to use at home. And I had a small anyana packet, beef stew, in the fridge. I took that, I prepared a meal, and I took pictures, and then I sent it out on Instagram and then on WhatsApp. I literally got my first order from that particular meal from a family friend which was a family of 3. From that, funny enough, she posted that meal on her status on WhatsApp. Another friend of mine saw that ad, and then she ordered her own meal, all right? So at the time I was selling a meal at 85 rands per person. I was not even charging delivery fee because I was like, people are mali. You know that thing of, I know people don't have money, blah, 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 and all that type of thing. So I sold a plate of food for like 85 rands, which was basically like your protein, which is your meat and your starch. I didn't have any side orders. And then from that, she shared with a friend of ours who lived in Sandton, and it kept on growing like that. It was basically a word of mouth. It kept on growing and growing and growing. So to cut the long story short, I ended up doing deliveries on a daily basis from my kitchen to the office parks that are in the area. One of them is basically in Eco Park because I lived in Centurion at the time. So I started doing deliveries during lunch. People would order from me, and it became hectic and more strenuous and more challenging because now it's pandemic. No one is allowed at complexes. You can't get helpers to come through. I was actually doing it all by myself. I would do groceries, do the cooking, and do the deliveries at the same time. By the end of each day, I would be so exhausted. But I told myself, you know what? It's better than sitting at home and not doing anything. So it went on like that. I kept on pushing. I kept on posting ads. I kept on putting myself out there. I did sales, so I know that if I constantly get the same clients every day, I need to go out and get new clients. So I made sure that I put an ad on Instagram on a daily basis. Each and every day, I would get about 2 to 3 orders, and that was something for me, and that was enough, okay? Rather than to actually not get anything at all. So my food crush started growing. I started having hashtags. I started having certain lines that I was using. I did promos and all that type of thing. And summer approached. So it was September. The business died down because now people were going out into restaurants. It was opened up for so I didn't have orders basically. So I needed to come up with a plan. So from all the work that I did, I find myself to 1 or no orders at all a day. So I was sitting at home. I was like, okay, what is it that I can do to actually keep going and all of that? And I was like, you know what? I need to get a food truck. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I need to get a mobile kitchen. My idea was to basically go out into the people and sell food in the street and have that traffic come to my kitchen. And I saw it as an opportunity to actually grow more than actually cooking from my kitchen and doing deliveries by myself. So from my UIF money that I was getting, I actually took some of it and deposited my food truck. And I got obviously some help from family as well. And remember, during this time, I don't have enough money to actually pay for my car. I'm struggling to pay rent. So I'm paying rent, maybe 50% at some point. Sometimes I don't even pay it. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it work. So I took some of the money from my UIF. I deposited the food truck. When it was almost done, which it also had its own challenges, got a bit of help from my family and the orders that I was making on a daily basis. By November, it was fully operational. I remember the first week of taking my food truck to Oliven, I had 0 sales. It was painful. It was heartbreaking because every day you cook this food, at the end of the day, you come back with the same food. Some of the food items you can't resell, so you have to throw it away. Some of the food items, luckily you can put it in the refrigerator and reuse it, but only for a day. Because after 2 days, then you can't do that because now you're going to have food poisoning, food contaminations, and all that type of thing. So I experienced a lot of food loss. It was frustrating. I had to move out of my apartment because now I can't afford my apartment. My car is facing repossession. I don't know what I'm going to do. But one thing I knew for sure was that I could lose my apartment, but I could not use my car because it was basically my source of income. I needed my car to move from point A to point B. I decided I was going to take my car and rented it out. There's a guy in Centurion that does this car lease contracts and agreements and all of that. So I rented my car out for some time so that whatever money I made at the end of each month could actually help me or help my car pay itself. And then I was able to take a bigger car that I was able to actually run the business still. And November, still no business. Business is not booming at all. I'm still struggling up until a point where I was like, you know what, maybe I need to stop the food truck, sell it, and then continue to cook from the comfort of my home. Just when I was about to make that decision, the following week, I decided, you know what, let's give it a try again. This was now the first week in December last year. I think on that first day, I remember it very well, we had about 10 orders that day. So people were basically starting to notice us because we were there every day, even though we didn't make much sales. Some days we would do one sale and all of that. That day, I remember I wrote it down, we did 10 sales, okay? It started going great. So every week I would count my sales, how much did we do? Just to give a rough figure, we did about 5,200 rands average every week until the end of December. It was good because it was not the same as what happened in November. So I told myself I'm going to continue with this. Now I started putting myself out there. I attended food markets on weekend basis. So during the week, I would be in Oliven selling, do my good orders at the end of each week. And then on a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I would attend markets. Now I was able to get help in the kitchen. So it actually, to cut the long story short, guys, it grew from zero to actually, for me to actually be able to pay for my car, because now I took my car back from the rental company and I could use my car and I could be able to pay for my car for that short period of time. And I remember my first food market. After that food market, where we did on a one Saturday, I came back. Okay. Before that, I decided, okay, fine. Now people are coming, they require card payments and all of that. So I got a Visa, like a card machine, to allow people to be able to use their card for card payments. So on that food market that weekend, we made about 7,000 rands in one weekend. I was like, you know what? It is better to get started with what you have than to actually wait for somebody to give you funding in order for you to start the business. So my experience from my journey is that not all of us as young people or as entrepreneurs, we will get funding. Not all of us will get help from the government, but it is up to us to stand up as young people to say, you know what? I need ABC and I need to make it work. Yes, it is important that you get your business plan done, you have all your ducks in a row so that you get your business up and running. But we can always do it without the business plan, and the business plan will follow later. A lot of young people today are sitting at home with their skills, with the knowledge and experiences that they can actually approach companies, approach businesses and be like, you know what? I used to work for this company. These are the skills that I have. I'm good at doing this. I can offer my services to you guys. If you can do it for a bigger company that employed you for several years and paid you a salary, you are able to then stand up, register your own company, and apply the same services that you have learned in the previous company and apply them for yourself and make a name for yourself. It does not help us to sit at home, cry. Government did not give me my 350 this month. I did not get this. Yes, I'm not being insensitive, but I'm trying to be realistic. We can't always be sitting, praying every day that God will come and help us. Yes, it's good to pray, but pray, get up and go work. We can't just open our hands and expect Imana to fall from heaven and then we live our lives. It starts from a survival mode, and then we shift from survival mode to now make a living. Today, I run a successful kitchen. I run a successful food truck, and I'm proud of myself of where I have started and how I have started. Because today, now I'm focusing, okay, fine. I did the operations. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a market. Everyone was my market. But I knew what I wanted from that. So from operating on the weeks that I have operated, then I was able to narrow it down and be like, okay, fine. Now I can't keep selling on a certain price because now it's going to kill me. I have to move on and focus to a certain segment. That's when I was able now to start categorizing my business and actually focusing on a certain target market. Because obviously, as much as you start on an open field, you can't always push your business like that. You always have to have structure. You have to have goals. You have to set up limits and ways on how you can grow, on how you can further market yourself. So what I would like to say to a lot of young and unemployed youth today is that don't wait for the savior. There is no savior out there. You are your own savior yourself. If you can't do it for yourself, no one else will do it for you. So thank you so much, Mxolisi, for this opportunity. I hope I was able to help and bring in a few ideas on our youth on how to actually make their living.
Thank you so much, Apiwe. I think one of the most important points that Apiwe brought up in the discussion is that we should not wait for anybody to come through. And it's very important for me to go back to the youth of 76, pardon me, because they were conversation starters, they were action starters, they were doers. And as such, they were able to actually pave the way for so many of us to actually stand today and say that we are able to have freedom of movement, to have all of that because of what they started. And I would like today's message to be all about igniting that spark in South African young people that we don't have to wait, because if you actually look at it, the mentality of the African transformation movement, or the philosophy or the policy, whatever you want to call it, is that we don't necessarily have to wait for anyone to come through, and we don't necessarily have to be dependent on the state. We don't have to be dependent on any other person, but we have to be our own people. Now, it is very important to note that, for instance, Apiwe says that she started from zero and went all the way up. And what we are saying as the African Transformation Movement is that it's very important for you to actually get started. And we got a lot of backlash by saying that we need to focus on ring-fencing the microeconomy, strengthening the microeconomy, the inner township economies or inner city economies, ensuring that, people can actually trade. And we were called xenophobic for that. But I don't understand the xenophobic part in this when you are actually standing to say that instead of waiting for grant 350, tata imali onayo and go start something. I know of a kid in Joburg who used to sell cakes like proper scones. He used to stand in robots, traffic lights. He went from that to actually having an entire store. So we can actually start the microeconomy. I'd like to state this very, very, very vividly so. It feeds the macroeconomy. You cannot be able to start, or you cannot be able to industrialize if you do not have capital. And you can't industrialize if you do not have the means for you to industrialize. And industrializing actually starts where you actually can afford to do something. That means that I've got 5,000 rands that's coming into my bank account. What am I going to do with that 5,000 rands that comes from my UIF? Am I going to buy nail products? Am I going to start a mobile salon? By the way, I'm a purely business person. I used to have a business with Upulane Senopwane, a beautiful, beautiful, brilliant lady. And we started it from a suitcase from 3,000 rands. We bought nail products. We bought all sorts of things, a suitcase and a Chevrolet Spark. We did all sorts of things. Lady did not even have a license at that time, but that did not stop her to actually say that, give me the car, I'm gonna go drive around and actually make appointments and actually treat people up. From that, we actually industrialized. We actually did. We opened up all sorts of branches. We opened up in Maboneng. We had a branch, like a fully fledged salon. We opened up in Bloemfontein. We had a fully fledged salon. So what I'm trying to say, and by salon, I actually mean a spa. So it's actually quite important for us to note or take away from a POS discussion that for her to be able to get to the point where she was, she started somewhere. And that's the spirit that the African Transformation Movement is trying to actually ignite today, that we can start from some place so that we actually get to say that, okay, fine, if Business Kamqolis now is a chain of what, 12, 40 stores, what's stopping us from actually listing in the JSE? What's stopping us from actually targeting all of these macroeconomic businesses that are monopolizing the space? Because believe it or not, entry barriers are set for us to actually say that, no, I don't think I can be able to do this. But if you start small, because the problem that we always have as South Africans is that we want to start big and launch these big things. I'd like to believe and actually remind each and everyone that is watching and listening today that before 2019, the African Transformation Movement did not exist. We started with 2 seats in the National Assembly, and we started with 2 further seats in the provincial legislatures. And today we are launching a fully fledged campaign for us to actually contest the local government election space. Now you look in 2024, we're actually going to be bigger. What we are trying to say is that change is effected by a small amount of action that triggers a chain reaction into so many things that fall into place eventually. And I'd like, with those words, I'd like to actually invite Esihle Mboyana. I'm so sorry, Tacha, but Esihle needs to go first because he's got an errand that he needs to run quickly. So Esihle needs to actually drill down into the specifics of word-based solutions so that we can be able to know that, yes, there's government, but what are we going to do and to actually have action-based solutions that are going to be implemented in the wards. Esihle Mboyana, 7, Esihle Mboyana, could you please come through? Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Program Director. Let me extend my greetings to the President, to the Head of Policy, to the National Speaker, spokesperson of the party, to the ATM Youth League Chairperson.
Evan Boyana, I'm so sorry. I'd like to just quickly interject. Could you please just turn on your video, because we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and all of those other platforms. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, my leader. I apologize. I'm actually on my phone because I've had an incident here where I lost my laptop and my other gadget. So I'm using a spare phone. So I wasn't quite sure if the video would be clear enough. But be that as it may, I greet the fellow panelists as well. Let me first commend Apiwe for her bravery after what she had gone through. And it's really the kind of people we need, people of the caliber that we need to actually listen to and pay attention to as we charter these new territories post-COVID-19. It is usually said that poverty, which is a direct result of unemployment, is a social injustice, and it is what leads to other injustices. And I would like to say that it's quite true, because we have seen the rise of gender-based violence. We have seen the rise of criminal activities. We have seen the increase in hijackings, in vandalism, and all sorts of ills, societal ills, which are interlinked or are direct result of. So as we are in this panel right now trying to find solutions, work-based solutions, to get us out of this situation, youth-centric solution. I'm reminded of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, which talks of physiological needs, safety needs, belonging needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization, self-actualization. In the physiological needs, especially now in the time of COVID-19, I want to believe and say that most of us are actually trying to make are trying to fulfill the physiological needs, because we're trying to find food, we're trying to find shelter, we're trying to find all of those things. And it's really concerning that some of the young people we have in the country right now have not had that mental adjustment. I'm sorry for changing into Xhosa, and I feel this will make more sense if I speak in my own language. Abantu abatsha will be aspiring to things that actually fall into our esteem needs and self-actualization needs. Whereas right now, the most pertinent and most important issue, in fact, is poverty, which falls under physiological needs in light of COVID-19. So I want to urge young people going into the local government elections that we need to identify gaps. We need to find gaps within our community where we can use our skills, like Usis Apiwa has said. She found Indlela to make a living. No knight in a shining armor. There's no knight in a shining armor that is coming to save us. We need to get up and need to identify gaps within the communities we reside in, economic gaps. We need to partner with other young people within the community and come up with the so-called hustles and try to really bring in the economic change that is going to assist us as we try to forge this new COVID-19 norm that we find ourselves in. Kukhona abantu abafana nabo Likau, the guy from Utrip. You look at him, he has a civil engineering degree or diploma from Eguruleni West College. Today he's running a very successful business, Yama Sneakers. And you'll find a guy called Theo Baloyi, who's an accountant by profession from BETS. He runs a successful sneakers business called Batu. You'll find a guy called Yandisa Zulu. He started an appliance company called Izulish. And all of these guys, you now check the background, they have not studied anything related to the business about Galileo, but they've used the education to assist them to critically think of solutions that will assist them to earn a living for themselves and create job opportunities for their peers and those that surround them within their communities. So ndifuna ukuthetha nomuntu omncinci in South Africa right now ukuthi stop waiting for umsebenzi just because you have graduated from a vet. Stop waiting for umsebenzi because you've got a degree from UCT. Stop this nonsense yokuthi siyeposta ku-tweet ukuthi when you've got 2 degrees and you've been unemployed for 5 years. Find something to do. There's a guy in KZN who started his business around the time of his Apiwa Kali business in 2020. He lost his job and he started selling fruit and veg. And I saw a post and I was really excited to see that post because he bought a container for himself. He stopped now selling from Estratweni. He's now starting a shop or a formal shop of some sort. From ukuthengisa fruits and veg ekoneni yestrato. Uyiqalele business nge-1,000 rand. there's a guy, Kabilame, I think it's Kabilame. He's on TikTok. He's #2, one of the most followed accounts on TikTok. And today his net worth is $2 million US. And the guy was a general worker in 2020 and he got retrenched. And he started simple videos online. Some things we complicate them and how easy as it is complicated, how easy they can be done. So I want to say, we need to get this mentality of what now I'm educated, I'm a graduate, and therefore I cannot do certain types of jobs. Get off your high horse. Get off your high horse. No knight in a shining armor that is come to save you. Make things happen for yourself. Because if political parties has been in power for the last 27 years, but as umehluko kusasokola abazali bethu kusokola thina, and as a result kusokola nabantwana bethu, because nathi sizele akekho umuntu ozosinceda if we don't take the matters ezandleni zethu and we use ingqondo esiyiphiwe nguThixo mahala and actually bring about the changes that we wish to see. And I also want to say, Program Director, one of the problems we have in this country are the so-called clever blacks. The clever blacks are a real problem in this country because sikula nalama chite kasi, nalama sister kasi, the minute umuntu gets a job in Sentin, they start living in gated estates. They are completely removed from realities that are faced by abantu abasahlala eLokishini. They want us to be PC when we start questioning certain things, when we start voicing our grievances. These spokespersons, this is how success happens. So clever blacks in the country are a problem. If you are inspired by a clever black young South African, you are in the wrong lane. Find someone from Lokishini who's actually making moves, who's uplifting the community. Find that person and make them your inspiration and try to do the things that they've done and try to succeed in that manner. We are not all going to be forex traders. We are not all going to have jobs, businesses that have already been established hundreds and 50 years ago. We need to start hustles and we need to pay, we need to be consistent in those hustles and make sure we partner with other young people. We need to create value chains. Obviously, Tembekwai once said, blacks, we've got a big problem with the blacks. They want to be the only or they want to be the first. We need to get away from that mentality. We are not going to be the first one to do something. We are not going to be the only one to do something. If someone has already done it, apologize, leadership. I think there was a call that came through.
Please go ahead, leadership.
Thank you, leadership. You are not going to be the first one. You are not going to be the only one. The least we can do, the most we can do, is to try and find ways and means to partner with other young people who are in the industries or in the spaces that we aspire to be ourselves, and find in there that we can work together and build an economy along those lines. Who has ever been successful in what they are doing by doing into Bedwadwa. We have to find in there to partner, and it starts here in our communities. And I would like to believe the communities we live in, we can consider Abantu Salanabo as our family members. And as Islungu says, charity begins at home. We need to start working with the people that are surrounding us. There's a lot of money in our communities, but the problem here we are sisiphathiwe ngongathi umsebenzi wase-ofisini ophatha i-laptop nepen ofaka isuthi notayi ube nomkhaba ucheba impahla ube nempahla ngongathi nguwona msebenzi engathi ubhadlile. Kanti imisebenzi ikhona apha elokishini. Ungawenza umsebenzi unxibe ushoti uthengise esifaza, uwenze umsebenzi unxibe i-overall, ube ngumsebenzi o-right and you make a living for your family. Asizosebenza e-ofisini esentini sonke. Uthola umuntu excited ukuthi ufumane umsebenzi esentini uhola i-3,000 rand. Kodwa umuntu ubulawa yi-taxi transport yokuya esentini ye-2,000 rand. Usheka ne-1.5 kunzima ukondla ifamily yakhe. Uthola ukuthi mina lapha elokishini I make 5,000 bucks and I don't have to be concerned about the transport cost. So we need to really wake up And Clever Blacks, it really annoys me because Clever Blacks are the biggest problem we have in the country. I see program director laughing there, but it's a problem. It's a problem. Clever Blacks, even right now, I'm sure I will comment upon because they are very clever. They are going to try and correct what we are trying to say. We are not going to be PC. In my rhetoric, when we talk politics in the community, I say stop being concerned about Marxism and Leninism. Those solutions are not going to help us here. We need South African local-based solutions for local problems. If someone adopt ideologies ezaziyenziwe ngabantu ababhubhayo ngo-19 abanenwele eziyephephu sishiye izinto esikwazi ukuzenza ngokwethu thina silapha elokishini ngengxaki esizibona ngoku sizawufana mthanyane. So we need to get up and start waking up, sisebenzisa ingqondo zethu. In closing, my leader, I want to give a story and say, during the looting, again, 11th July 2021, we created a volunteer group, a friend of mine. I run a saloon here in Malvern in Johannesburg. We started a volunteer group and we called it a Malvern cleanup. In that volunteer group, we attracted numbers from surrounding communities. And I want to say, Uguti, the support we got was predominantly from white people. Most people that joined the group were white people. Yes, there were young Black South African that joined and other foreign nationals that joined the group. And there's a case study right now. A young man joined the group, and after joining the group, he posted and said he was looking for work. He was actually unemployed, but he was willing to come and volunteer and assist us to clean the aftermath of the looting. And when he joined, he was there. We did a 4-day cleanup. We started on the 15th. We finished on the 18th of July. He was there for the cleanup every day. And when he posted, I said to him, I have a saloon here in Malvern. And my saloon is small, but I said, I've got space for you. You can come through. Let's see what we can do. I offer 40% commission. For every 10 rand you make 4 rand. And he came through. I showed him the ropes. And for some reason, he
It seems like we've got bandwidth issues with for
one of the leadership.
You may continue. You may continue. In closing.
Okay, thank you. In closing, so this young man today is a social media manager for a business of one of the people that joined the volunteer group for the cleanup. So what I'm trying to say is, had he not put himself forward and joined a group of volunteers, without anything promised to them, without any stipend from a government, from an organization, we are concerned community and we need to do something to clean up. Had he not put himself forward, today I don't believe he would be a social media manager for an up and coming business in the health space, because that's what they do. So I want to urge Abanda and say, to stop this thing. Those are the businesses about that they must have more. They started off as in the form of spaza shop. We need to start entering those spaces. We need to create value chains so that we can have buying power, go to the cash and carries and get discounts and start running businesses. You need to professionalize it. You need to run it as if you are running a conglomerate. Again, said, you can start a business without having a profile, and then you can do those things later on. Think about what you want to do and start your hustle and then professionalize it. Because when you start running your business in a professional manner, you are going to attract a lot of people who actually want to assist you to get where you want to get to. So in closing, when I'm a leader, I want to thank you for this platform. And I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to leave now because I've got people here. I'm recording this at the salon, so I have to drop off some of my colleagues and staff members. But thank you so much, and I wish a panel like a platform like this would continue so that we can continue to have these conversations. They are quite needed. And please, sidiniwe kuba PC. Umuntu makathethe le nto isenhlizweni yakhe, because ukuba PC does not pay bills. Ukuba PC does not stop e-banks from calling us ukuthi zizothatha imoto zethu. Ukuba PC does not stop our landlords wethu from evicting us when we fail to pay the rent. Thank you so much.
And that was U7 Sihle Mboyana, who is a councillor candidate in Ward 118 at Johannesburg. I'm just going to ask him to mute himself. And yeah, he's got quite a lot to say. But the most important part of his discussion is the ability to stand up and invoke a spirit and a sense in you that says that no matter what comes, I'm actually going to do this. Now, going back to the discussion, president of Not In My Name International, he said that the marginalized groups in South Africa, such as your women and your LGBTQ community, are finding it quite difficult for them to actually, pierce through the glass ceiling and be able to occupy predominantly heterosexual male spaces in the workplace, in the business area, and so forth. And I'd like to believe that, when we formulated many of the policies that we have, be it your ring fencing of the microeconomy, the transformation of the macroeconomy, and all of these other policies, nothing is able to actually go through without the economic emancipation of the youth from whatever issues that they are facing. Because I'd like to believe that the issues that we're facing right now are not necessarily new issues. The youth of 1976, this is a continued struggle. The youth of 1976 actually marched to the streets so that they can have freedom of movement and all of those other freedoms that they actually sought from the government at that time. Not even the government, but for them to actually have, operating rights and operating freedom. And we are standing here today, being the youth of 2021, facing somewhat mutated issues that came as a result of whatever that happened in the past. And not to say that we are blaming the legacy of apartheid, but we're actually saying that in what we are facing right now, what can we be able to do? And how can we be best able to incorporate whatever that we have? Because you always have to start from a position of strength. I strongly believe, and President Vuyolwethu Zungula strongly believes, that for you to be able to be successful in whatever that you want to do, you need to start from a position of strength. Now, it means that being able to stand up and do whatever that you can, exactly what our speakers were actually saying. I want us to be cognizant of time, because kuko ba usiyabulela gentile, no ba unansika umakinane apa who actually have families. Not everybody is a bachelor here, like Mr. Makubu. So ngicela, let's just keep it very short from now on, as we give over to Tasha Maila for her to actually share her journey in business. And this is a lady that I have never met, by the way. I was with a friend about yesterday. Yes, I was with a friend yesterday, and I talked about how I want to start programs and stuff. He said, you know what, listen, Kuko, these ladies that I met about a couple of weeks ago, and they've got a very beautiful network, and they don't even realize that they've got a network, but it's to say that I want to have flowers. Oh no, so-and-so has got a business in flowers. And these are all Black young women who've got their own network that is not even a network. They don't even realize that it's a network. So Utacha is one of those ladies who forms part of that network and has got a beautiful business that I want us to actually listen to the story, because if you actually look at it, the middle class is failing. The middle class is in debt. The middle class can hardly sustain themselves. Kuthi kufiki one by fair to ushilo 7 Esihle Mboyana ukuthi we are clever Blacks. By the 1st or the 2nd of the month, we don't have money anymore. We're buried in debt. Omachonisa bayafona, ABSA uyafona, FNB uyafona, and so forth. What can we do for us to actually be able to say that, okay, I've got my business, but I also want to start I've got my job, but I also want to start a business or whatever that I can for me to actually be able to sustain myself. Tasha, over to you. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you.
Good evening, servants. It's Thatcher, the Margaret Thatcher one. Esihle has opened a can of worms there. Can you hear me?
Yes, you may proceed. You may proceed. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Usihle has opened a can of worms. It's the very same people that will judge us to say we are clever blacks that will make us not to go to the streets and sell bananas because we look like clever blacks. And it's the very same people that will make us be afraid to even start because they know that we've got degrees and they will laugh at us if we are in the street selling bananas. So, Mxolisi, you also have a point when you say we all want to start big because all our peers are up there. They are up there and they are doing it for themselves, but we don't know where they started. So with me, it's a different story. I'm employed. I work 8 to 5, but as you said, it's not enough. Nothing is enough. By the second day of every month, I'm on 0 on every account. So it became a serious issue. I was a makeup artist. I still am a makeup artist. And COVID happened. I was into beauty, makeup, and hair. Then COVID happened. Because of that, I had so many debts to pay, and I just didn't know where to start. So as time went, that's when I sat down and said, I've always had an extra money. So now that there's no extra money, that's why I'm suffering this much. So, and then I looked into what's happening now, what's in demand, what do people want? Then I realized that people want food. Food is what people want. And the only thing that's going now is what people will buy, and that's all that's selling. And then because of the pressure that we have, most of us, we from Eilalini. When we are in the city, we from somewhere. So you can't go back home and say, I didn't make it, even though I'm employed, but I can't do this and that. I can't pay for my car, I can't pay for my house, I cannot do this and that. So we also have pressure as youth of South Africa, and this whole thing of being middle class is also a problem because now we don't know how to present ourselves because there's pressure that you are a graduate, you need to have 1, 2, 3, and you look this good, you need to have 1, 2, 3. So that's when I started by selling fruits. I went to buy fruits and I used to give them to my friends around. I'll share with them. As time went, I saw as a business, I saw this whole thing as a business. Then that's when I posted on my WhatsApp to say, I'm selling oranges and bananas, grapefruits and avocados as a combo. You get this for 100 rands. And then by maybe 2 hours after that, everyone ordered and everyone in my circle ordered, and that's how I started. So the business is going. We have a salon in Midrand, Lynn's Salon. That's where we meet. Most of the girls meet there. And it's just word of mouth. Everyone buys. Everyone have kids and they buy. And from there, as the fruits business is growing, there's less pressure on my side. I have money on the other side that's coming from my salary, and I also have a side hustle that I'm doing. So the whole thing is we all breadwinners somewhere, and the salary that we're getting is not enough. There are loans that we have. We have debts everywhere. So that was my solution to this whole problem that I have. Let me cut the story short. I'm now selling fruits and they go weekly. Every Friday I deliver. Even now I had to rush for this meeting because I was delivering. So yeah, that's how it went. Thank you, Mxolisi.
Thank you so much, Thatcher. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult for me to actually say that, because when I'm nervous, my mouth dries up. And I'm about to introduce a very big person, Usanele Makinan. So I'm really, 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 really nervous right now. But the most important part that you mentioned is the ability to find a balance. And especially when we start conversations of saying that, yes, we are change starters. Yes, we are, movers and shakers and whatnot. But what exactly are we doing? Are we doing it just for sustainability purposes? Are we doing it for us to actually reach a certain goal? Are we doing it to industrialize? Are we doing it to have conglomerates of companies, big companies, that we can actually say that this is the legacy that I left behind while I was still on earth? And yes, most of us in this conversation, because the word African transformation, it means that we are here not to conform and say that we will give you 350 stipends. No, we don't do that. We unfortunately don't do that. We don't conform into such politics. That is cheap politicking that actually seeks to create dependency in our youth. And as we stand here today, we are proud to say that nobody today, in all of the panelists that stood here today, nobody actually said that, yes, we are promising this, we are promising that. Not even the president of the African Transformation Movement. What he stood and said that, let us be like the youth of 1976. Let us actually change things. Let us change the status quo and be able to take matters into our own hands and say that this is the space that we're going to be occupying, and this is how we're going to be occupying the space. Now, Thatcher mentioned something very important, and I think I also introduced it when we started speaking. When we started speaking, that the ladies are a network, but they're not realizing that they are a network. Now, we are going to actually get into the nitty-gritty of actually discussing what is the importance of having business forums in whatever provinces that we reside in whatever regions that we reside in, to actually ensure that we've got a certain network. For instance, very typical example, a young lady wanted to start a mutual bank, and that mutual bank, in the eventuality of things, was going to be funding businesses that can't get traditional funding from banks, that can't, and we are talking Black businesses that can't get traditional funding from banks, that can't get traditional funding from all sorts of places. Now, this young lady was actually going to assist us in such a way that we create a network that is going to actually be, channeled towards ensuring that we've got businesses that are funded, that are running, and that are sustainable. So what is the role of not only business forums, but also funding corporations such as your NEF and all of those other businesses, funding corporations, for them to actually ensure that we've got viable and sustainable businesses? I see that Makinane keeps on logging on and off. I think it's a network issue, but while he's trying to log in, he forms part of a chamber of commerce that is comprising of many businesses that came together and said that we want to start, we want to work. Now we're going to give over to him and actually say that what can we do, or what is the role of Chamber of Commerces in all of the regions that we reside in, for them to actually lead to Black, I'm sorry, I'm going to unapologetically say this, guys, unapologetically say that it's Black businesses, because we are the peoples that actually suffer the most. Even during the unrest, we are the businesses that didn't have insurances and that had to close down indefinitely. So what is the role of a Chamber of Commerces and such other business forums in all of the regions that we reside in? And that is Sanele Makinan, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Policy. I truly appreciate that introduction. And I'm going to be very laconic because I'm worried about time. And as you correctly said, we all have a bit of things to do, especially at night, as young as we are. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm particularly delighted to hear us as young people talking about the type of things that we're talking about right now. I will be very, very hasty to say that the various chambers of businesses are playing a very vital role in how we get to network as entrepreneurs and how we get to grow as entrepreneurs, particularly young entrepreneurs who may not necessarily have the experience, the contacts, and the know-how in the industry. So we rely on formations such as chambers, your business forums, and any other platform to create a harmonious manner of networking and creating new relationships. In my capacity as the Chief Executive of the Dr. Kenneth Kaunda Region Chamber, I oversee institutions that are raking in between 12 and 15 billion rands per annum. And of these institutions that rake in this much money, I would tell you in all honesty that 95% is white-owned enterprises. And of that figure, about 1.1% is young people-owned company. And this young people-owned company, I also include white young people. So that's where the dilemma is. And you can imagine our region is the biggest in the Northwest Province, and we oversee these type of enterprises right there. So what I'm trying to say is that at 15 billion rands per annum, and our contribution is less than 0.1%, it should really be worrying, you know. And then I made a very deeper analysis and I said to myself, okay, fine, so we are contributing less than 0. whatever amount percent. How and what are we doing, or how do we calculate those that are in the tendering businesses and others? Often what happens is that in our small localities, the entrepreneurs that are in the space of the tendering businesses do not often disclose the enterprises and the impact of the enterprises that they have in their local economy, because what they do is to divert whatever receipts they may have or the proceeds of their businesses in other different channels. It could be to either bribe an official or pay off somebody that managed to give them the tender or other things. So they don't disclose in all honesty what it is indeed that they have benefited from that particular work. So within the chamber movement, I realized through creating the various events and programs that there are a number of entrepreneurs, particularly Black entrepreneurs, that have the potential to help others, but they have chosen not to do that. And they often decide to isolate very far away from the incoming new entrepreneurs, and they do not relate very well with them. I don't know if is it a socio-psychological issue of the region where I currently am, but in speaking with other chamber CEOs, like the Cape Town Chamber of Commerce, like the Durban Chamber of Commerce, I've learned from my colleagues how it has been difficult for them to transform how young people share opportunities with other fellow young people. Most young people like to write a success story on a Twitter timeline, on Facebook. They write success stories on Facebook, but do they really translate into how other young people can have access to benefits like that?
Apologies, Sanela. Could you please just unmute yourself?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm not sure what happened there. I don't even know where I was. But so what I was saying is that, so we don't have a crisis of young people not knowing what businesses to start. We've got a crisis of young people starting businesses and not being comfortable letting other young people know how they manage to sustain their businesses. Instead, young entrepreneurs are at the forefront of writing very interesting stories about their successes on Twitter and showing us the very nice car I've bought, the very nice house I've bought. It's great, you know, but to what extent do you take time to share the true essence of opportunities of enterprising with other young people? So the chamber environment is often that. But what happens, which becomes a bit of a problem, so in the chamber movements, the people that are very consistent members in chambers or in forums are most often white, successful old entrepreneurs. They often want to adopt one or two fledgling businesses and use them for their Black economic empowerment scorecards. And many young people are very comfortable with this because they follow through with it and they form part of entities wherein they literally join for the sake of being a face of the institution, but they are not part of the true economic benefits of the enterprise that they are in. And this is not just a phenomenon that is happening within our region. It's a phenomenon that's actually growing. And in fact, within the South African Chamber of Commerce, it has become a discussion topic. So where I'm trying to go, Program Director, without really being very long, there is a need for transformative capital. And transformative capital is a basis of combination of different types of capital. So you need financial capital. That is the first thing you need as a businessman. You need that financial capital. But most important than financial capital, you need knowledge capital, because without the knowledge, you really cannot express yourself properly. So you need to know something, either academic or experience or fact, because you have experienced it in your life. And beyond knowledge capital, you need relationship capital. And most people currently are thriving quite well just with relationship capital because they know people in places that can open the door, that can assist with this, that can put together that. So all financial capital, relationship capital, knowledge capital, they form transformative capital. And without which, it becomes very difficult for most young people that want to enter into the business space to succeed. So I'm trying to narrow down what I'm saying in closing is that young people need to understand that participating in these chambers and forums does not automatically guarantee you business, or it does not automatically translate to a sale. That's not a sale. It's an opportunity for you to speak and meet like-minded people. But it does not translate to you thinking that because I have filled in a form for the Black Management Forum or for this or for that, that automatically means business. It does not. You need relationships, and you build relationships by working your way into people. And most of them have got a feeling that they've got these very great ideas and no one has ever thought of this. I'm going to create a shoe that nobody has ever seen in the world. That is very silly. There's nothing new under the sun. So young people must learn that the ideas they have, you cannot keep it to yourself for too long. And when you are an originator of an idea, it does not necessarily mean that you must keep the idea to yourself. Share the idea, share the enterprise. If somebody has got the capital to get your idea going, allow them to invest in your idea and you can both drive their agenda. So most young people find themselves trapped in that because they have great ideas, but they don't want to share the idea with other people. So if a person brings in the equity in your business and they're willing to help you start the business, be in a position to take that, without which it's going to be difficult for you to really see yourself launching and developing further. But yeah, Police, I don't want to be very, very long because I know I can be. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Like Nyani, I'm not that anymore.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think you've given us, all of us, something to think about and all of the streams of capital that we can actually explore in starting businesses, because the truth is that the growing crisis of unemployment, especially in the youth, is a pandemic on its own, and we can't ignore it, because the actual extended rate of the unemployment in the youth in the age category of 15 to 34 is whopping 63%. That means that about 11 million young people are sitting without jobs, and more than 55% of these people don't have matric, and about 30% of these people only have matric. And realistically speaking, more than 6 million citizens are dependent on low-skilled jobs and businesses for them to be able to make a living. We need to be able to transform the space in whatever way that we possibly can. And I would like to thank all of the panelists that came here on today, and ensuring that the African Transformation Movement, or the platform that we have, is not encouraging people to be dependents, is not encouraging people to be waiters of certain things, be waiting on certain people, be waiting on this person and that person, but it's encouraging the people to actually stand up and fight, stand up and actually take charge of their own economy, because we can't keep on being spectators in our own economy. That is an injustice that we are bringing upon ourselves, and it is not going to sustain us, nor is it going to sustain our kids, nor is it going to sustain anything that we try and build in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for this platform that we've actually shared together today. And I'd like to ask Uba 07 Basanda Nondlanzi just to give us a quick overview in less than 2 minutes so that we can actually close the platform and let everybody go sleep and be with their loving families, because we've taken enough time from their families already as it is. But as we stand here, the manifesto of the African Transformation Movement is never going to say that be a dependent, wait on the state, wait on your neighbor, wait on whatever. It's going to always say that because we are transformative in nature. It's always going to say that do something, start something. If you can't, reach out so that we can actually, assist you. And by reaching out, I should mention that we've got our WhatsApp page that you can text us on. The number is 073-387-4934. Just to repeat it, it's 073-387-4934. And let us start forums. Let us link people up. Let us speak out. Let us get mentors. Let us do whatever that we possibly can do as the youth of South Africa for us to actually carry over the next generation. Because if we don't do this, we are creating so many problems for ourselves. 7 Basanda Nondlanzi, please, in closing in less than 2 minutes, and let everybody sleep. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, 7. We started hearing from the president encouraging us to look at unemployment and come with practical solutions. U7MM, who's the head of policy at ATM, emphasized what he called anchors, which outline how ATM is outlined in its policy framework and aligned to issues that are facing young people. We've understood from the discussion that we had today that social entrepreneurship is one important vehicle that we should consider to tackle unemployment and move out of the valley that we're in. And we know all the social ills that come with unemployment, including the dependency, both of the man that is unemployed and women who end up being involved in gender-based violence due to that. We have had speakers come through demonstrating to us that the very important thing of not giving up, as the journey becomes difficult, not believe that the price is of doubtful value. And I think all the entrepreneurs that came through today have that common feature. They have stood the difficult times and didn't give up, and now are beginning to speak of better days. And this should be a motivation for us in the African Transformation Movement as we approach the local government elections, to remember that the African Transformation Movement aims to transform politics. And being a self-funding party is one way in which we aim to transform politics, because that will allow us to remain autonomous and not to be bought with monies. And so we must be prepared to suffer the consequences, if there are consequences to suffer, because of the decision that we've taken. But let's rest assured that as long as we are self-funding, we are in the best position to combat and fight corruption. But on top of that, why should you vote ATM in the upcoming local government elections? Many political parties are putting posters without the candidates that they are presenting forward. As the African Transformation Movement, we allow you as a communities to choose your members. Those are the members that we're taking forward to the elections, And we think that if you vote the African Transformation Movement, people who understand that local government is important because local government supports national government. The discharge of funds for implementation at communities is through local municipalities. And therefore, we should choose people that we trust, members who subscribe to the values of PUTA. I want to thank everyone who has attended this panel discussion. I think it's important all the time to engage. And so it is important that you continue engaging with the African Transformation Movement on our socials, on various telephone numbers that you receive for different branches that we have across the country, and ensure that you engage the leadership of the African Transformation Movement that is always listening and willing to champion issues. Now, in closing, solutions for ward level, it has come from this discussion that we must ensure that we build within our wards. We connect the business people within our ward and we form business fora within the ward. Those are the people who can facilitate the social entrepreneurship we're talking about. They can be able to assist others within the local communities. They can be able to contribute to the social development within the ward. So those business fora are important as a ward-based solution to ensure that whatever we do as the leadership is supported by our local businesses and our local communities. Thank you very much, Program Director. I think I will leave it there.
Thank you so very much, everybody. Ndicela nihambe niyolala bethunana, niyofocusa kwi-families zenu, and remember to register to vote on the 18th of September, and make sure that you vote for the African Transformation Movement. U7 Esihle and other candidates are actually standing for councillor candidates. So please do vote for the African Transformation Movement in the upcoming local government elections. Thank you so very much. Good night to everybody. Thank you so very much for availing yourselves. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Keep well.
Thanks again, leadership, Sebo.